they told you your blood type only matters at the hospital, that it's just a medical number AB, or O. But what if I told you it's much more than that? What if the blood flowing through your veins holds ancient codes about who you are, your strengths, your emotional triggers, your deepest drives? In Japan, people use blood types the same way others use zodiac signs, like a key to personality. And while science may raise an eyebrow, psychology especially, the deep, symbolic work of Jung whispers something different, something far more powerful. Because when you learn to decode the hidden patterns behind your blood type, your entire life starts to make sense. In this video, you'll uncover why your type might explain why you lead, overthink, feel too much, or not enough. You'll see how ancient archetypes, cultural myths, and psychological truths converge inside a system most people never question. And by the end, you'll never look at your own blood the same way again. It's curious how, even in an age overflowing with information, people still feel lost inside themselves. Jung, the father of analytical psychology, saw this long before smartphones and social media took over. To him, the human being carries not just a personal mind, but a vast, shared psychic system called the collective unconscious. It's like having a secret map inside your psyche, and the treasure? It's you. Each person, Jung believed, carries ancient, universal images that shape thoughts and behaviors. These are the archetypes. They're like stage directors behind the curtains of your soul unseen, but pulling the strings. The hero, the shadow, the wise old man, the caregiver. These are patterns that live in all of us. Ever found yourself trying to save everyone around you, even to your own detriment? That's the savior archetype stepping into the light. And the fascinating part? These images aren't formed from personal experience. They're inherited, encoded in the psyche, like psychological DNA. A boy in Brazil dreams of dragons. A girl in Japan does too. They've never met, but their psyches speak the same symbolic language. That's the collective unconscious at work. And no, it's not mysticism. It's deep psychological structure. And even today, many thinkers still build upon it. This is where the concept of individuation comes in. Don't confuse it with individualism. Individuation is the process of integrating light and shadow, conscious and unconscious, instinct and reason uniting what's been torn apart. You know that moment when you say, "I don't know why I did that"? That's your unconscious self, driving the car while you're in the passenger seat. True individuation is more than self. Awareness, it's inner transformation. And it doesn't happen in a weekend retreat, trust me. It's a lifelong journey that demands courage and radical honesty. Where to begin? Try writing down your dreams for 30 days. Seriously. Jung used dream journaling as a practical tool to chart the depths of the unconscious. You'll be surprised by what comes out. Jung also introduced the 4 main psychological functions: thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition. Each person leans toward one and neglects another, and this changes how they see the world. A thinker may ignore emotions. A feeler might overlook facts. Knowing your dominant function is like learning your native language. It helps you navigate life more clearly. Then we have 2 attitudes: introversion and extroversion. This isn't just about being shy or outgoing. It's about where your psychic energy flows. Introverts draw inward, searching for internal meaning. Extroverts move outward, feeding on external stimulation and connection. Knowing this about yourself can help you stop comparing your path to someone else's. Some say analytical psychology is too abstract to apply in daily life, but that's just not true. When you start identifying your inner patterns as characters, your awareness deepens. That self-sabotaging voice, name it. Maybe it's your inner critic or your wounded child. Once named, it loses power and you regain control. What's beautiful about Jung's work is that he didn't want people to fit into fixed categories. Quite the opposite, he said. The goal isn't to become someone, but to return to who you truly are. Individuation is like peeling back the layers until your authentic self emerges. And sometimes, that truth is buried in symbols, even in something as ordinary as blood. So, what if your blood type actually held deeper symbolic meaning? Maybe what flows through your veins says more about you than you've ever been told. Let's dig into that where culture, symbolism, and personality collide in ways both strange and revealing. In Japan, if someone asks your blood type, it's not for a medical emergency, it's to guess your personality. Sounds strange? Not there. This belief, known as Ketsueki-gata, is deeply woven into their cultural fabric. It's like asking someone their zodiac sign, but instead of stars, it's about what's flowing through your veins. According to this theory, Type A individuals are seen as organized, sensitive, and detail-oriented. They're the ones who double-check everything, prefer structure, and hate being late. You might recognize Type A energy in a project manager who color-codes their calendar. But in Japan, this isn't just a quirk, it's considered a trait rooted in your blood. Type B, on the other hand, is thought to be creative, passionate, and a little rebellious. These folks are the rule breakers who bring wild ideas to the table. Think of the artist who sleeps all day, paints all night, and forgets to return texts for a week. In Ketsueki-gata, this isn't considered a flaw, it's just their nature. A different personality frequency, you could say. Type AB? Now we're talking paradox. This type is often labeled as rational and critical, yet emotionally complex. People say they're unpredictable or mysterious because they hold two extremes at once. Imagine a scientist who writes poetry in secret, or a calm friend who suddenly speaks with piercing intensity. It's not contradiction, it's duality in motion. Then we have the classic Type O, often described as confident, natural-born leaders. They're charismatic, assertive, and usually the first to take initiative. Ever met someone who walks into a room and instantly draws attention without saying a word? That's Type O energy, magnetic and self-assured. In Japan, they're even considered the ideal type in dating culture. Now, let's pause and be clear. Modern science doesn't back this theory. Numerous psychological studies have found no strong correlation between blood type and personality traits. But just because something isn't proven doesn't mean it's meaningless. Human culture thrives on symbolism, and belief systems shape behavior in very real ways. Think of it like astrology or personality tests. They might not be exact science, but they offer frameworks for self-reflection. When someone identifies as Type A, they might strive harder to be structured. A Type B might embrace spontaneity more openly. Whether it's placebo or personality, the result is the same: self-fulfilling identity. And this is where the conversation gets interesting. While Jung never directly linked blood types to the psyche, his work on archetypes and symbolic meaning opens the door for exploration. What if blood types are modern-day symbols, rooted in collective belief rather than biology? A cultural myth, sure, but a powerful one nonetheless. In a world obsessed with science versus mysticism, this belief system sits right in the middle. It's not backed by lab results, but it persists through generations. And in a way, that tells us something profound about the human need to categorize, understand, and narrate who we are. Sometimes, we don't need proof, we just need a mirror. And that mirror, well, perhaps it's not found in genetics alone. Maybe it's in the stories we tell about our blood, our personality, and our place in the world. Which brings us to a deeper question. Could these blood types actually reflect something symbolic within the psyche, something Jung would have been curious about if he were alive today? Let's play with the thought. What if your blood type isn't just biological but symbolic? Jung taught us to look beyond surface realities and explore the archetypal patterns hidden underneath. While he never connected blood types to personality, he did believe in the power of symbols to shape the human experience, and maybe that's exactly what blood types have become in modern myth. Not medical categories, but mirrors of the psyche. Take Type A, for instance. Known for its meticulous, harmonious nature, it echoes the caregiver archetype, the one who brings order to chaos and seeks emotional balance. This person avoids conflict, thrives in routine, and worries deeply about others. In everyday life, think of the friend who keeps everything organized and never forgets a birthday. The symbolic role they play? Restoring peace where tension brews. Now think about Type B. With its boldness, curiosity, and disregard for limits, it resonates strongly with the explorer archetype. This is the restless soul, the one who can't sit still, who needs to see, touch, taste, and break the rules. It's the musician backpacking across continents, or the coder who drops out of college to build a startup. In mythic language, This is the one who ventures into the unknown to bring back fire. Type AB, with its logical yet emotionally rich profile, invites us to consider the sage. The sage seeks truth, not popularity. They can see both sides of an issue, hold contradictions, and stay centered in complexity. Think of the professor who debates philosophy by day and meditates in silence by night. This blood type's symbolic energy lies in integration of mind and heart, logic and intuition. And then there's Type O, radiating charisma, initiative, and strength. It strongly aligns with the leader archetype, the one who doesn't wait for permission. This person acts, even under pressure. You see it in entrepreneurs, community organizers, or that kid in school who naturally took charge during group projects. But with leadership comes responsibility and the shadow of ego. Now, are these associations scientifically accurate? Number. But that's not the point. Symbols don't obey lab rules. They follow psychological resonance. We see ourselves in myths, characters, and patterns because we're wired for meaning. Jung knew this. That's why he studied alchemy, dreams, religion, not because they were factual, but because they revealed how the human mind interprets reality. And in that sense, Ketsueki-gata isn't a joke or superstition. It's a cultural projection of archetypal energy, a lens through which people view their roles, gifts, and even flaws. Just like a zodiac sign or a tarot card spread, it becomes a mirror. And sometimes that mirror shows us a version of ourselves we've been too distracted or too afraid to notice. This symbolic reading also invites us to reflect on our psychological traits more deeply. Not, am I a type A? But, in what areas do I act like a caregiver? Where do I lead, explore, withdraw? These aren't boxes. They're starting points, paths toward self-discovery. Because when you name a pattern, you start to own it. And from there, you can shape it. And that's the hidden power here. Not in proving whether blood types determine personality, but in using their symbolism as tools for autoconhecimento. It's less about what's your type, and more about what's your story. Because the stories we believe about ourselves, whether grounded in science or myth, ultimately shape the life we build. So now, the question becomes, if blood carries symbolic truth, could its meaning lead us closer to the self? Could your type be more than a medical fact, maybe even a psychological compass on your journey of individuation? Modern science wants numbers, formulas, proof. But the human psyche? It craves meaning. That's why so many people still turn to astrology, tarot, or even blood type personality theory, not to replace science, but to complement the soul's search for identity. Jung knew this hunger well. He didn't dismiss myth, she explored them. When people ask, "What's your blood type?" in Japan, it's more than small talk. It's a subtle search for identity, a way of understanding how others process life. And while clinical psychologists may roll their eyes, analytical psychology would ask, what does this belief system reveal about the collective unconscious? Because belief, even when unproven, can mold perception, and perception creates reality. In that light, your blood type becomes less of a category and more of a mirror reflecting traits you've learned, absorbed, or projected. It doesn't need to be biologically true to be psychologically real. The more you identify with a symbolic system, the more you may unconsciously align with its patterns. That's the magic of archetypes. They shape us from the inside out. For example, someone who believes their type B blood makes them wild and creative might take more risks, trust their instincts more, and live less apologetically. Is that science? Number? But it's psychology in motion. And if Jung were here, he'd probably tell you, symbols don't have to be factual. They just have to be felt. That's why the conversation about blood types shouldn't be dismissed as pseudoscience. It's a symbolic tool, and symbolic tools have always helped humans navigate internal worlds. Whether it's dream analysis, active imagination, or cultural myths, Jung encouraged people to explore these systems for what they reveal about the self. Because the real journey isn't about proving whether blood types determine personality. It's about asking what stories we tell ourselves and what those stories unlock within us. That's the real work of individuation. Not to find yourself like you would a lost sock, but to create and refine yourself through deeper awareness. This is the subtle dance between science and mysticism. The lab seeks to explain the what. The symbol tries to reveal the why. When both work together, transformation happens. You can know your blood type on a medical chart and still ask, what does this make? And here's the truth. Whether you're type A or type O, the number itself is neutral. But the meaning you assign to it, that's where the power lives. It becomes a gateway, a code, a way of accessing unconscious material you've never questioned. And from that access point, everything can shift. So the real question is, are you using these patterns to understand yourself or to limit yourself? Because symbols can empower, but they can also trap. Jung warned us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. And blood, well, blood is a perfect metaphor for fate. And now that we've ventured through the symbolic and the scientific, perhaps it's time to bring it all together. Your blood type, your archetypes, your unconscious all connected. But the only one who can decode it fully is you. Blood types aren't just medical facts, they're cultural identities. Children grow up hearing, you're type A, you must be dependable. And guess what? Many grow into that expectation. Jung called this the personae mask we wear to fit the world's narrative. But what happens when the mask becomes our reality? When a society reinforces traits based on blood type, people begin to internalize the roles. Type O children are told they're born leaders. Type B, emotional rebels. Over time, these traits aren't just stereotypes, they become psychological habits. This is the power of collective belief. It's not genetic programming, it's cultural scripting. Ketsueki-gata works like a social shorthand, much like astrology in the West. It simplifies people, gives quick labels, and just like all system shahs, its limits. But the psychology behind it is fascinating. It shows how deeply humans crave identity, meaning, and categorization, even if it comes at the cost of nuance. Now here's where Jung's ideas hit hard. He warned us about confusing the persona with the self. When we over-identify with the roles society gives us, we forget our deeper nature. That's when projection begins seeing others only through the lens of our expectations. And suddenly, our relationships become performances. Imagine dating in Japan, where someone might reject you based on your blood type. Sound extreme? It happens. But it's not about cruelty, it's about subconscious filtering. Jung would say the collective unconscious is shaping social dynamics. These beliefs aren't isolated, they form part of a cultural archetypal field. Yet, even in the West, we do the same thing. We say, she's such a Capricorn, or he's totally a Sigma male. These are all ways of mapping personality through symbols. Ketsueki-gata is just another cultural mirror, reflecting shared ideas about identity, love, trust, and destiny even if we don't always realize it. The interesting part? People often behave according to their labels. If you're told you're impulsive, you might stop trying to be disciplined. If you're called sensitive, you may avoid confrontation. This is how belief sculpts behavior not through force, but through expectation. It's not fate. It's reinforcement. This is why self-awareness matters so much. Jung taught that individuation is the process of peeling off layers of conditioning to find the authentic self. So whether your label comes from blood, zodiac, or family roles, it's not who you are. It's just who you've been trained to be. The journey is about waking up from that hypnosis. But here's the paradox. While labels can trap, they can also guide. Sometimes the role you're cast into points to a real inner pattern waiting to be explored. The key is to ask, am I living this because it's me or because it's expected of me? That question alone can open doors within. And if blood type symbolism works like a cultural costume, maybe the next step is learning how to take it off and put it back on by choice. Which leads us to a much bigger question. What happens when symbolic meaning clashes with scientific data? There's a quiet war playing out in the modern mind science versus symbolism. On one side, we have the lab coat, cold, precise, data-driven. On the other, we have the symbol, mysterious, poetic, and deeply human. And in the middle stands the confused individual, trying to make sense of both. Jung lived in that tension and never chose a side. He believed in science, but he also believed in dreams. He analyzed data, but also studied myth, alchemy, religion. Why? Because while science explains how, symbolism reveals why. And the psyche doesn't live in formulas, it lives in meaning. To dismiss one side is to live half a life. Modern psychology often tries to sanitize itself, removing anything that smells mystical. But the irony? People keep returning to spiritual systems, symbols, and archetypes. Why? Because even if you prove something isn't real, it can still feel true. And feeling, as Jung knew, is a legitimate psychological function. Take the blood type theory. Science says there's no correlation, but the belief persists. That's not a flaw, it's a feature of the human condition. We're not just biological machines, we're narrative-driven beings. And sometimes, a symbolic truth hits deeper than a measurable one. In many ways, this is the same debate we see in medicine versus healing, logic versus intuition, structure versus soul. The Western world often favors the rational, but the psyche craves wholeness, not just facts, but meaning-making. Jung called this process individuation, the merging of opposites into a unified self. This doesn't mean we should abandon evidence. It means we should make space for both truth and metaphor. The lab tells us what's measurable. The symbol tells us what's personally transformative. One is external reality. The other, inner resonance. Both are needed for real healing. Symbolism gives language to the unseen. It lets us talk about grief, love, desire, fear, things science struggles to quantify. Imagine trying to measure the feeling of being lost in life. You can't, but a symbol, a dream, a myth, even a blood type can express it with haunting clarity. And this is where the battle becomes collaboration. When you stop pitting science against mysticism and start seeing them as tools for different layers of truth, Jung didn't fear ambiguity. He explored it. He taught that wisdom lives where contradiction meets courage. So maybe your blood type isn't a personality test. Maybe it's a gateway, a prompt for reflection, a symbol that resonates with an inner archetype. And maybe it doesn't need to be proven to be powerful. Because the psyche doesn't care if something is logical, it only cares if it moves you. Which brings us to the final step, turning all of this blood, type, archetype, culture, and symbol into something practical. Because self-discovery without transformation is just trivia. So, how do you actually use all of this in real life? Now that you've seen the layers behind something as simple as a blood type, can you really go back to believing it's just biology? Because once you understand the symbols, the projections, the unconscious patterns, everything shifts. You don't just know your blood type, you start to know yourself. This isn't about superstition. It's about reflection. Every culture builds tools to explore the unknown, and Ketsueki-gata is just one of them. But now, you're equipped with something deeper. The ability to decode the hidden architecture of your psyche. That's the real power behind Jung's work. So I'll ask you, what role are you unconsciously playing? Are you living as the explorer, the caregiver, the leader, or someone else's script entirely? Because you have a choice. And once you become aware of the forces shaping you, you can change everything. Use this knowledge. Journal about it. Reflect on your behaviors, your patterns, your beliefs. Start asking better questions about yourself, your story, and what's really driving your choices. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. You've just scratched the surface of who you are, and we're just getting started.